Cyberpunk 2077 is as easy a game as you want it to be. If you play on the lower difficulties, you can wade into combat for the most part without a care in the world. Up that difficulty to hard and very hard though, and the game definitely starts to ask more questions of you. The truth is, the harder the difficulties you play on, the more you have to rely on the RPG mechanics of the game and a few of the nuances. Fear not, intrepid wannabe gangster, we have you covered, as we always do, with 7, well, more like 30, but 7 has a better ring to it, handy tips to make you a pro. From settings to specific upgrade paths if you're struggling with Cyberpunk 2077 or just need a bit of guidance, fear not, we've got you covered. Without further ado folks, here are 7 tips to make you a pro at Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 can feel a little bit funky the first time you pick up a controller. Suddenly it can feel very off with the shooting, until you delve headfirst into the settings that is. So before you get cracking skulls on the streets of Night City, grab a gun, some ammo, and then head to a back alley with some discernible targets to fine tune your settings. When you've found a nice quiet spot, head into the settings menu and fine tune not only the vertical and horizontal sensitivity, but perhaps more importantly, the inner and outer dead zones. Basically how long the stick takes to react on both the initial movement and before it reaches max movement. Just play around with it a bit until you're able to aim when and where you want to without too much trouble. Once you've done that, you should be set up to kick some serious ass. However, if that still doesn't work, in the same controls menu, click Advanced Controls and dial down or up, your call, the horizontal and vertical turn bonus, which actually can make a hell of a difference. So, our advice, tweak and tweak until you're completely satisfied. Don't worry too much about screwing up the settings either, as you can hit Y or triangle to restore the default settings. Before we move on, we recommend a few more quality of life changes. Firstly, the vehicle camera in the gameplay tab, change that to high, otherwise you'll constantly see the destination icon right in the bloody way. And lastly, but by no means least, head to the graphics tab and turn off film grain, chromatic aberration and motion blur. It just makes the game look infinitely better. That said, only do this on the high-end last-gen consoles and the current-gen consoles. Oh, and 2 quick notes before we press on. 1, get your character customization right before you jump into the game, even hair and tattoos, because there is no way to change it in Night City at present. 2, choose the Nomad origin story route for no other reason than the intro is super cool. We'd actually say it's the best out of the 3 available life path choices. Very hard difficulty in Cyberpunk 2077 is, well, to put it simply, it's not a cakewalk. You can't just steam in without a care in the world and blast subhuman scum off the streets of Night City willy-nilly. Playing on very hard is going to take careful progression, a managing of the way you play, your weapons, their attachments and so on. In other words, you have to get your RPG on, and by on, we mean on like Donkey Kong. Something that's not very well communicated in Cyberpunk is the fact that it's set up very similarly to how Oblivion was back in the day. I.e., you do something, you get XP for doing that specific task in its very own specific category. I.e., shooting handguns improves the handguns subcategory, shotguns improves the annihilation subcategory, hacking people can improve the quick hacking subcategory, and so on. So, in Cyberpunk 2077, it doesn't pay to be a jack of all trades. Well, not early on, obviously, as each category has its own levels, and its levels not only unlock the perks in it, but they also have a bunch of passive perks too. For instance, if you want to unlock the ghost perk, you need to be a level 12 in the stealth category. If you're running around being a madman with a katana, chances are you'll never get to level 12, unless you drastically change your playstyle. So, play with that in mind. Don't mix up guns and playstyles, stick to a rough way of playing. Sure, stealth and assault can go hand in hand, so don't pigeonhole yourself either. We would recommend you play as an opportunist too, and by that we mean don't always spend attribute and perk points straight away. Keep a few in the bank for a rainy day, unless you're absolutely desperate to get an unlock right away, of course. This will sometimes allow you to change direction mid-mission, and save yourself a lot of grief. I.e., you're in a warehouse full of enemies and there's a door you can brute force through, but there's a skill check. If you have points in the bank, you might be able to level up and take this route, avoiding combat altogether. Money and street cred are so important in Night City as they are in the real world. Okay, so nobody really gives a toss about street cred in most people's real lives, but you should in Cyberpunk 2077. Before we talk a little bit about money, let's talk about street cred. Street cred in Cyberpunk 2077 isn't just some green little number in the top left corner of the player menu. Oh no, street cred is actually far more important than that. It dictates which options are available to the player, whether that's certain mods and attachments to buy new weapons, new cyberware and so on. Most main missions will net you street cred, yes, but try out some gigs, side missions and break up that criminal activity, then you should find yourself flying through the ranks in no time whatsoever. There are no real shortcuts here per se, you just gotta get out and help the inhabitants and fixers of Night City. Okay, mainly just help the fixers. As for money, there are 3 ways to make money fairly quickly. 1. Just loot the shit out of everything and then sell it. Standard RPG fare there. What isn't quite standard though is that you should perhaps only sell the grey and green rarity weapons, with all the other tiers just disassemble them for parts. The rarity of a weapon you break down dictates the rarity of the parts you receive. More on this later. And 2, go after those cyber psychos, which are effectively mini boss fights of sorts. These bad boys, while tough for a low level character, should be a piece of cake as you work your way through the campaign, and they net you a fair bit of cashola as well, that you can use to buy weapons, ammo, sweet rides, or pay your way in certain other missions. But finally, and more importantly, hack those access points, but we'll get to that in a sec. Just as an aside, I know it's tempting, but don't spend that cash on the numerous sexy vehicles that pop up, because apart from getting you from A to B and looking good while doing it, they don't really serve any purpose. Obviously, when you're flush with cash, go nuts, but early game, save that cash as you always have a ride you can call upon, and even pick up a few throughout the campaign. And if you don't like it, just steal one. As long as you understand the proviso that you can't unfortunately store it in your garage. If you are stealing cars or motorcycles, remember that A, if you want to swipe a sweet ride parked on the road, it might depend on your technical ability, and if you need to jack a super stylish car while there's a driver present, it might depend on your body skill. And if it's too low, you can just shoot the car to make them get out and run, and then you can just jump in. The way of life in Night City is that whoever has the money has the most powerful bodies. Mercs do jobs to get cash to jack up their bodies to the max, and so should you. This is going to take a lot of money and time though, and even certain street cred levels to get the best ones. Good job we told you how to get a crap load of cash and street cred then, isn't it? A couple of tips for this one that can prove invaluable. Firstly, keep an eye out for the mission full disclosure given to you by Sandra, who you help in the first mission you do with Jackie, you know, bathtub chick. Her mission will see you venture into Kabuki in Watson to rescue her databank. During this mission, you'll wander into the basement of a Kabuki building and discover some rather interesting things. If, after you've cleared the basement, you head upstairs and confront the Ripper Doc, if you spare him, he'll give you a discount on his goods. I mean, you'll probably have to sell your soul to do it, but who cares? It's a video game, it's not real. I mean, it's Night City, that's what everybody does, so why not join them? Also, who can say no to a discount, eh? In terms of good skills to go for, maybe a little bit later on for some of them, X-Disc gives you an extra RAM unit for hacking, Heal on Kill gives you 10% health for every kill, and Mechatronic Core increases damage against machines, and all these can be bought from Doc Rider in Northside in Watson. Few side notes though: 1, they can be expensive, around 5k each and more, and 2, some might require a certain level in a particular skill to proceed. Something more to think about when levelling up. Charging headfirst into combat and very hard is probably not the wisest idea in Cyberpunk 2077. It's only going to make you stain the mean streets with your blood, not your adversaries. So, why not hand back a touch and use the environment to your advantage? Yes, we are of course talking about becoming a hacker extraordinaire. First things first though, and we mean like super early in the game, you're going to want to upgrade your cyber deck, allowing for a bigger base RAM, aka your hacker ammunition, a bigger buffer size which is a longer time for the hacking mini game, and more slots to equip more quick hacks. You can actually pick up a rare cyber deck for 15k from a Ripper Doc, and it's a worthy investment until much later in the game when your street cred level allows you to invest in a legendary deck. Then you're going to want to invest in 3 tiers of biosynergy and weak link as soon as you can, allowing you to get your RAM back during combat and reducing RAM usage. This means that hacking in combat and combat scenarios will then become a major part of your playstyle, which makes things so much easier. Also, early on you can pick up the ping quick hack from a mission that is great to work out where everyone is in the battlefield, but also that mission teaches you how to use access points, and these are massive. These allow you to activate daemons and negatively affect anyone connected to that node, but also cash. If you purchase the extended network interface perk as well, it automatically tells you where the red access point is on a map, like the little red icon, And with these access points, you can get so much money, it is actually ridiculous. If you buy the advanced data mine as well, you can get even more money per access point. If you get all those, you will have so much money coming out of your ass after a while that you can literally buy anything at any time in Night City. And one final note before we move on, anything you can do in Cyberpunk, the enemy can do too. So occasionally you'll come across netrunners who are hackers, but if you invest in the I Spy perk in the quick hacking subskill tree, you'll instantly know where they are. Once you do, try and focus on them sooner rather than later, otherwise they will hack pieces out of you from afar. Okay, we've given you most of the tools you need to survive, but what do we recommend in terms of playstyles? Well, we are huge fans of quote-unquote aggressive stealth, so do that. What exactly do we mean by that? Well, Silent but Deadly sums it up. So stick to the shadows, pick off foes, and slowly one by one whittle down the numbers until you're the only trucker left standing. That's not going to mean you aren't built for a straight up onslaught, as you'll have to do that at times too, but that should always be plan B. So in terms of stealth, obviously make use of your hacking skills in terms of distractions and stuff like that and try and get behind them and take them down, but also attach a silencer on a revolver and go for headshots. If you have a good stealth skill and a good pistol skill, you should be able to one-shot kill most people with a headshot. And if you get the memory wipe hack, you can make enemies forget like you're ever there, like you're a ghost if you do miss. So use distractions, whistles, and slowly make your way through every enemy encounter. And like we said, if the shit does hit the fan, you can either try and lose them or blast them to high heaven. Perhaps the easiest way to approach very hard is just to avoid combat altogether, whether that will be through a dialogue choice, opening up a new route, or bribing someone. There are so many options in Cyberpunk 2077 that you probably don't have to wander into the lion's den every goddamn time. And last, but by no means least, if you're playing on the harder difficulties where every edge counts, crafting will actually be an essential tool in your arsenal. Normal difficulty, not so much. A few things to note here. Firstly, if you pick up an iconic weapon or item, you automatically get the blueprint, so you can create them whenever. Secondly, ammo might be in short supply early on, heck, or even later on if you're as trigger happy as me, so don't forget you can craft that too. Thirdly, there's a dealer in Jig Street in Japantown who sells rare parts, slightly west of the Ripper Dock there. Look for junk shops on your minimap too, they also sell the rare parts. And also, I swear, green circles usually indicate that you can talk to that person. Not that you really want to, but you know, it's just nice to know. Also, keep an eye out for crafting blueprints. Also, for instance, the Armadillo crafting mod can be found on the lit up bridge by the Cherry Blossom Market fast travel point in Japantown in Westbrook, and that alone can make you pretty invincible. Tens of crafting, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we'll go again. Sell the greys, break down the others, and with those you can create and upgrade your favourite weapons. In terms of what you actually stick with throughout Cyberpunk, look out for special weapons that come with different kinds of perks and use them to your advantage, whether that's weapons you can charge to fire through certain bits of cover or fire projectiles that bounce off walls. They'll become invaluable later in the game when you don't want to throw yourself actually into combat. And we briefly just mentioned it, but let's end on it again to emphasise its importance. Upgrade your favourite iconic weapons, that or remake them, which will replace your old weapon with a fancy new one that's far more powerful. And nobody can complain at that. So there we have it, folks. 7 tips to make you a pro at Cyberpunk 2077 and set you up to smash your way through very hard mode. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Cheers folks, bye.